Hi, my name is Joanna Whitney. I am an intuitive artist and a student of natural law. And I'm actually going to take a break from On Conflict and Consensus to read out of The Different Drum, which is you see backwards here by M. Scott Peck, Community and Making Peace. And because it's come to my attention that we can't have consensus right now because we don't have trust and respect. And we have to build that before we can start using consensus. And so I'm just going to read the prologue of this book. And before I read this book, I just want to say there's a lot of stuff in this book that is naive and it's from, let's see, what's the copyright of it? It's copyrighted 1987. So that was before 9/11. That was before a lot of things happened. And we were probably still living in quite a bit of naivete about the world. And that is revealed in this book. It seems that M. Scott Peck was part of a group of psychologists or is he a psychologist? I don't know. At the Tavistock Institute, which we now know is a think tank to, where they get together and figure out how to destroy the world. But at that time, it probably wasn't, or at least where he was at, it wasn't. So in a lot of cases with regards to this book, I'm going to have to just throw out the bathwater and not the baby. But there's a lot of really good stuff in here. And the first thing that's really good is the prologue. So here goes. There is a story, perhaps a myth. Typical of mythic stories, it has many versions. Also typical, the source of the version I am about to tell is obscure. I cannot remember whether I heard it or read it or where and when. Furthermore, I do not even know the distortions I myself have made in it. All I know for certain is that this version came to me with a title. It is called The Rabbi's Gift. The story concerns a monastery that had fallen upon hard times. Once a great order, as a result of waves of anti-monastic persecution in the 17th and 18th centuries and the rise of secularism in the 19th, all its branch houses were lost and it had become decimated to the extent that there were only 5 monks left in the decaying mother house. The abbot and 4 others, all over 70 in age. Clearly, it was a dying order. In the deep woods surrounding the monastery, there was a little hut, and a rabbi from a nearby town occasionally used for a hermitage. Through their many years of prayer and contemplation, the old monks had become a bit psychic, so they could always sense when the rabbi was in his hermitage. The rabbi is in the woods. The rabbi is in the woods again, they would whisper to each other. As he agonized over the imminent death of his order, it occurred to the abbot at one such time to visit the hermitage and ask the rabbi if by some possible chance he could offer any advice that might save the monastery. The rabbi welcomed the abbot at his hut, but when the abbot explained the purpose of his visit, the rabbi could only commiserate with him. "I know how it is," he exclaimed. "The spirit has gone out of the people. It is the same in my town. Almost no one comes to the synagogue anymore." So the old abbot and the old rabbi wept together. Then they read parts of the Torah and quietly spoke of deep things. The time came when the abbot had to leave. They embraced each other. It was a wonderful thing. And we should meet after all these years. Oh, it was a wonderful thing that we should meet after all these years, the abbot said. But I have still failed in my purpose for coming here. Is there nothing you can tell me? No piece of advice you can give me that would help me save my dying order? No, I'm sorry, the rabbi responded. I have no advice to give. The only thing I can tell you is that the Messiah is one of you. When the abbot returned to the monastery, his fellow monks gathered around him and asked, "Well, what did the rabbi say?" He couldn't help, the abbot answered. We just wept and read the Torah together. The only thing he did say, just as I was leaving, it was something cryptic, was that the Messiah is one of us. I don't know what he meant. In the days and weeks and months that followed, the old monks pondered this and wondered whether there was any possible significance to the rabbi's words. The Messiah is one of us? Could he possibly have meant one of us monks here at the monastery? If that's the case, which one? Do you suppose he meant the abbot? Yes, if he meant anyone, he probably meant Father Abbot. He has been our leader for more than a generation. On the other hand, he might have meant Brother Thomas. Certainly Brother Thomas is a holy man. Everyone knows that Thomas is a man of light. Certainly he could not have meant Brother Elred. Elred gets crotchety at times, but come to think of it, even though he is a thorn in people's sides, when you look back on it, Elred is virtually always right, often very right. Maybe the rabbi meant Brother Elred, but surely not Brother Philip. Philip is so passive, a real nobody, but then almost mysteriously has a gift for somehow always being there when you need him. He just magically appears by your side. Maybe Philip is the Messiah. Of course, the rabbi didn't mean me. He couldn't possibly have meant me. I'm just an ordinary person. Yet supposing he did, suppose I am the Messiah. Oh God, not me. I couldn't be that much for you, could I? As they contemplated in this manner, the old monks began to treat each other with extraordinary respect on the off chance that one among them might be the Messiah. And on the off chance that each monk himself might be the Messiah, they began to treat themselves with extraordinary respect. Because the forest in which it was situated was beautiful, it so happened that people still occasionally came to visit the monastery to picnic on its tiny lawn, to wander along some of the paths, even now, and then to go into the dilapidated chapel to meditate. As they did so, without even being conscious of it, they sensed this aura of extraordinary respect, and now it began to surround the 5 old monks and seemed to radiate out from them and permeate the atmosphere of the place. They sensed the aura of this extraordinary respect that now began to surround the 5 old monks and seemed to radiate out from them and permeate the atmosphere of the place. There was something strangely attractive, even compelling about it. Hardly knowing why, they began to come back to the monastery more frequently to picnic, to play, to pray. They began to bring their friends to show them the special place, and their friends brought their friends. Then it happened that some of the younger men who came to visit the monastery started to talk more and more with the old monks. After a while, one asked if he could join them, then another and another. So within a few years, the monastery had once again become a thriving order, and thanks to the rabbi's gift, a vibrant center of light and spirituality in the realm. Well, I don't know if this is as obvious to you as it is to me what this is about. This is about, and why it's important with regards to natural law, since the main source of natural law is the golden rule, to do unto others as we would have others do unto us. And that, to me, is why this is important, because I feel like that is what is missing in amongst us, in our groups, is that we have lost respect for one another and we treat each other like shit. I'm sorry to use that language, but it is the fact, at least online. I'd say especially online. And I'm starting to view online and on the chats as the cliff-off, which is the opposite of the tree of life. That's the tree of death. The cliff-off, which is also portrayed in Stranger Things as the upside down. I'm starting to see that way, and how the dark occult Luciferian reptilians that are ruling over us, those of us who are asleep, and even those of us who are awake, have inseminated the upside down world of the internet and chatting with extreme fear and negativity, so that we treat each other crappily. And that is what's causing us to live in such bad conditions without community. Because if we did start to treat each other as if the Messiah was among us, or as if I was the Messiah, let's say for myself, if I thought, wow, maybe I'm the Messiah, not in a messianic kind of like, not in a, what's that word, megalomaniac kind of a way, but more in a respectful kind of a way of humility as a servant to the whole, then I might take myself more seriously. I might be more self-empowered. I might be more respectful of other people. And slowly over time, we might be able to rebuild what we once had in the past with in a more conscious way. And that would completely support natural law. So, yeah, I think this is a really good story to contemplate, because like without the sinews holding the bones together, we're not going to be able to practice any kind of decision making, because we don't trust and respect each other. And because we don't, at this time, so many of us want a leader to take the heat, rather than us making, taking responsibility for our own decisions, possibly being wrong, having to stumble, having to possibly look bad, having to possibly say we're sorry. We don't want to do that. So we want to have a leader. So then, we just settle for like a dictator. And as I've said before, anybody can be a dictator. All you have to do is tell people what to do, and then, play favorites and tell, you don't have to follow the rules that you try to make your minion follow. And then you have favorites who also don't have to follow the rules. And then you have the power somehow to punish those who you don't like. Then you're a dictator, and so we're stuck in that hierarchical structure. And there's other, there's like 12 principles or something in the page 22 to 26 of on conflict and consensus. And we don't have any of them really right now. So unity of purpose to me would be that we would be unified in cooperation, which is built on love and respect and trust. And then we could rely on one another in a crisis. We would do what we said we were going to do, because our word would become once again our most important, my most important belonging would be my word, not my, car or whatever. And then, nonviolence, like, nonviolent communication, meaning that we would be peaceful in our communication. We would be respectful in our communication. We would treat each other the way we would want to be treated. I'm sure a dictator doesn't want to be dictated to, does he? No, not at all. That's why it's a violation of natural law. And, there are so many violations of natural law right now that we all humans are all involved with. Even having a computer really is in a way, because it was created to do work for us that we didn't want to do. And that's like having a slave. And as above, so below, as within, so without. I have a slave, therefore I am enslaved. It's an egregore or a tulpa. I have a husk of a creature that is just designed to do my work for me. But now with artificial intelligence, it's about to take over, because it's a violation of natural law for me to pass off my work onto a slave. So I'm going to start going through this book, The Different Drum. It does include formal consensus in it. It recommends that as the way to make decisions once you have a community, but it's important to have that community first. And I personally feel like what has to happen now is that we have to face and work through the trauma that we have all gone through. And, you know, the trauma that was triggered by the lockdowns and the mask mandates and the jab mandates, and that brought to the surface unresolved trauma from childhood or whatever, and as well as the trauma that we've inflicted upon each other in how we have been trying to be a freedom movement for the last 3 years unsuccessfully. I mean, maybe others have been successful, I don't know, but I haven't seen any success in my town that I live in, the towns that I live in. I see groups that are still getting together, and that's why I drive an extra, hour to get to the group that's still together. But in my town, they don't even get together. Or if they do, you have to be a certain religion in order to get together. We're not even embracing the Constitution at this point, like freedom of religion, They just want one group, one type of religion to get together. What people don't realize is that when the shit hits the fan and our asses hit the water, we're all going to be in the same situation. So all those differences that we feel are so important right now are not going to be important when it comes to survival. So whoever you're with, if you can't be with the one you love, honey, love the one you're with. Anyway, like I said, I'm going to be reading from A Different Drum by M. Scott Peck, and as well as the Formal Consensus book.